everyone know that this is being recorded and broadcast online, so just so you're aware. And I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Bristol Bay Members Meeting. And I'm really glad that we're all here because we weren't able to do this for 2 years now. So it's pretty incredible that we're here. So thank you for showing up. We've got a lot to be thankful for, but first off, I just want to make sure that you guys are thanked for showing up, members, our guests, our staff, and our board. Everybody here, thank you for showing up. Okay.
I'm going to do.
So yeah, we're here finally because we've had to deal with COVID. So we're thankful first that we're alive. We're thankful that we were able to fish during the COVID season. And that was a big deal. So I'd like to give a round of applause for everybody for putting up with things. And just remember, those quarantine flags, those are things that are going to be worth money in a few years. Keep those for your retirement accounts. So we got a lot to be thankful for. We fished that crazy season and it worked out. Who would have thought it? That was 1 in a million. It was an absolute miracle that worked out. Everybody worked together. And I still can't believe that we were able to prosecute that fishery when we were able to. Right now, we're celebrating the fact we had a record run. We've got good prices. We've got high market demand. Things are good. Things are really good. And we want to be happy about that. And we've also got a lot to look forward to. Number one, being into COVID, but we got a lot to look forward to because we got our forecast. That's a good thing. We've got good market conditions. That's a good thing. So we've got quite a bit to look forward to, and I'm really happy. So let's get started. First off, we've got our presenters. We've got from ADF&G, Forrest Bowers, Tim Sands. They're sitting in the back. They'll be at the end of the show. We've got Rising Tide Communications. Alina Fairbanks, she'll be presenting for Rising Tide. Who else have we got coming to speak?
Michael.
Michael Link and Jeff Ragnart from the Port Moller Test Fishery. Those guests. Lindsay Leyland, Catherine Karscallon from CFBB. So we've got a full slate. In addition, I want to make sure that we thank our staff who they're lean. It's a lean 4-person staff. They're super committed and they're very passionate. And because of all those things, it drives the board members to try and keep up with them. They've raised the bar and they keep raising the bar. And hopefully that's going to mean better outcomes, better projects, better decisions because they challenge us on a daily basis. So thank you very much. Yeah. To inspire the board, so I might as well introduce the board. We've got Nels Yuri. We've got Reba Temple on the Cloud 9. O'Neill on the Warhog. Johnson, the Vice President on the Jazz. Surrender. James Wilson on the Sausalina. And I've got a boat. I didn't get to fish last year, but I'll be fishing this year, the Kelly J, Michael Jackson. So here. So the format's going to be, I'm going to step away. Board members are going to introduce their different topic areas, their committee members, and they might want to let you know these committee members are volunteering their time and expertise. Our committee structure is a lot different this year. We've got quite a bit of participation from fleet members. We've got some SetNet inclusion in the committee so that we can get their viewpoints. A lot is happening, and everyone is excited about how much effort is being put into these things. So thank you. Without further ado, Andy Wing.
All right, thank you guys. We're going to have Catherine Karscallon up first to talk about the Pebble mine, and then we'll go into a market update. Sorry. This is the mic.
Okay.
So
okay, great.
you might want to pull down.
Yeah. We can notch down. Yeah, go for it.
All right, thanks y'all. So I'm just gonna keep this down so I can project and spit on everybody. My name is Lindsay. I work for United Tribes of Bristol Bay. Most of you have probably heard of it. We're a tribal consortium UTBB represents 15 federally recognized tribes in the Bristol Bay region, and our organization is the one. The tribes that I work for have been kind of leading the Pebble fight. So that's my org. Kat, I'll let you introduce yours.
Catherine Karscallen, I'm a BBRSDA member, and then I'm the director of commercial fishermen for Bristol Bay. So we work in consortium with United Tribes of Bristol Bay, the RCA, and all the groups working for Pebble. So we're representing the commercial fishermen and the industry in the fight. And we have a booth together at Expo, so we'll be there for more information, but we'll just give a quick brief update here.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I'm a set netter. So I'll leave as soon as I'm done, I promise. No, but really, so we just wanted to just take a few minutes to update you all on what's going on with Pebble. Has actually happened in the last year. As Kat said, we do have a booth, so please come and visit us at some point if you're over at the Expo. But before we even get into our update, I just want to say, Prayana, thank you guys, because it is people in this room and the folks that you all work with and work for, and the tribes in the region and the coalition that we have that have been leading this fight. Like that's the reason that we're where we are today, and we'll share some exciting news about what's happening right now. But first, just like when you have the time, give yourselves a pat on the back, pedicure, donate some fish to a set netter. Like you guys are doing good stuff, and we really appreciate what the RSDA has brought into the coalition. So I'm just going to give a really brief overview. Again, we don't want to take up a lot of time, but starting with a year ago, if you all remember, Pebble's permit got denied by the Army Corps of Engineers, and that was a big deal. The only kind of bad thing about that denial is that it didn't secure permanent protections, right? It was just a one-time denial of a permit that could be reapplied for. A different company could come in and look at the project. It was a one-time stop, which was great, but we're still pushing for those permanent protections. So shortly after that denial in 2020, November 2020, a year ago, the tribes and some coalition members, BBNA and BBDC out of the Bristol Bay region, came out and asked for what's called the call, this two-pronged approach, legislative, congressional, and administrative agency, in securing permanent protections for the Bristol Bay watershed. The agency piece of that is what we're going to focus on, just because that's where we're at right now, and we're so close to securing. That comes from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and what's called the 404C process. I know you all are really familiar with that term, but it's the Clean Water Act that says EPA can come in, they can stop this project where it's at, or before it happens, after it happens, or after development starts. It's called 404C, veto authority. So the exciting news is that I'm going to skip like a whole section of stuff, but recently, like 2 weeks ago, the EPA, a federal district court, ruled that the EPA would reinitiate or restart that process that got paused by the Trump administration back in 2019. So we started a 404C process that in 2014, that kind of got paused, withdrawn when the Trump administration was in office, and just a couple of weeks ago, a court decided to undo that pause, or it's called remand and vacate, lots of technical language. But basically, we're back on track for securing 404C permanent protections, and we're really close to getting them done by fishing season of next year. I'm going to turn it over to Kat, just so you talk about what happened yesterday. We had some really good news out of the EPA, and what you all and we all are going to continue to do in this super critical time. I know we've been saying for years, just one more comment. Really this time, we mean it. So Kat,
Really hope we mean it. Yeah, and I'll just echo Lindsay's thank you. I mean, we don't have that up in Bristol Bay right now, and it's in huge part, fully in part to everybody's participation in all these processes. So Lindsay's right, we're gonna have one more process to talk about with the EPA. So yesterday, they announced a timeline for accepting information. So like Lindsay said, when the courts remanded the decision back to EPA, it put the 2014 proposed determination back in place. So all the comments, everything we've done to this point helped form the initial proposed determination that they put out, but that was before the mine applied for the permit, before an environmental impact statement was done at the area. So there has been more information gathered since then. So EPA technically could just finalize that proposed determination and move forward, but more likely they'll adapt it in some way, and part of that adaptation will be through a public comment period. So we're expecting the announcement they put out yesterday actually put a timeline to it. So they announced that they will finalize that process of accepting new information and analyzing, all the new technical information and public comments. They'll finalize that by May 31st, which means somewhere between now and then there will be a public comment period, and it'll likely be, technically it can be as short as 30 days. It would more likely be 60 days, but that's going to be all of our time to, once again, comment to the EPA, ask them to finalize the process. So after May 31st, they'll have, I think, a max of 60 days to finalize or put out a final determination. So that means we could see final protections as early as July 31st. So probably while we're fishing, but the good news is we can get all our commenting in, do all our participation before we go fishing. And then, hopefully we could get some good news during the middle of next fishing season. So there are comment cards out there. When we do enter the official comment period, just stay tuned. We'll be putting out information, helping people comment and help you give substantive comments. But today, if you can, just fill out a comment card. We'll be turning those in, and they will be part of the official docket. So just making sure that we have numbers, we have commercial fishermen represented in the comment process. Fill out a comment card and either leave it here, leave it at the RSDA booth, or leave it at our booth at Expo, and we'll collect those and send them in. And you'll be entered to win fabulous prizes also.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much more of our time, so if there's one or two questions, we can run through those. Otherwise, I think everybody give yourselves a round of applause and just celebrate the fact that I think we're on a good track.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. Are there any questions before we sit down? Easy.
Good job.
Cool.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will have a presentation at the Expo Hall on the main stage at 2:45, and there's a former EPA staffer who will be helping us with that presentation. So if you have more technical questions about the process, that's where to get that information.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, next we're going to move into our market update. So this chart shows a 5-year moving average of ex-vessel value and ex-vessel price for Bristol Bay Sockeye. I originally did this and I hadn't adjusted it for inflation. And so I was kind of curious to think, well, okay, how much of this is just due to inflation? The I word's kind of the thing we're talking about these days. And it turns out even when you do adjust it for inflation, there's been a lot of growth. Since 2006 really is when this data set starts. And of course, we all know that wild fisheries go up and down each year. There's a lot of variability. When you look at that over a 5-year period, again, moving average, you can see there's been a nice uptrend. The 5-year average price is up 54%, and the 5-year total ex-vessel value is up 93%. So, a lot of, there's definitely luck and good fortune to this, but luck is also the residue of good design. And there's been an amazing amount of investment, vision, and hard work. And this does not happen by itself. So, kudos to everybody in this room, everybody in this fishery and industry that has made this really a successful industry. It's incredible. So that's also reflected in your permit values. Again, since 2006, we've seen a big increase in SO3T permit values. They're about $106,000 more valuable than they were back then. This is not adjusting for inflation, but I wanted to show the relative difference. Of course, as the bay has done better, set netters have done better as well. You can see their increase there. And then when you compare it to the average permit value for all other Alaska fisheries, you can just kind of see the difference. And Bristol Bay has fared very well in recent years, as we all know. This is a chart I like to, I think this really says a lot. And this is probably what I get asked the most about from fishermen is, okay, what's our end of it? What's it worth, and what do we get of that? And are we getting a fair price and that sort of thing? So what this shows is essentially the resource value, the wholesale value of Bristol Bay Sockeye products, and how much is retained by processors and how much is paid to fishermen. So the dark blue lines are the base ex-vessel value, The light blue is the bonuses and adjustments and quality premiums. And so you can see the percentages there. And again, some years it's a higher percentage, some years it's lower. So we put that orange line there to show you the 5-year average. You know, fishermen got a lower percentage in 2020, largely I think due to COVID, as well as, you know, the harvests in other parts of Alaska were not good. I believe outside of the Bay, it was the worst season since 1979. And of course, the companies that operate in Bristol Bay as processors, they operate in many other fisheries and salmon fisheries around Alaska. So I'm definitely not making excuses or apologies for processors. These are the numbers, and you know, I want you guys to be as informed as possible. So we obviously don't know what 2021 is going to bring. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in some more slides, but you know, I think the only other point I want to make here is that what we've seen is that as wholesale value has gone up, you know, you see the rise in those bars, we have seen fishermen get a higher percentage of the value. And that makes sense. You know, the more margin that there is there, we would expect more competition to fill that. And you know, we hope to see that over the coming years, but we have seen signs of competition even, you know, since, well, I guess over the last decade. I mean, you know, Silver Bay came in, Extreme Seafoods came in 2014 with a big price promise and, you know, quickly exited, but North Line entered, and, you know, also we know what happened there, but, you know, companies are getting into this, and we've seen a lot of mergers and a lot of consolidation. These are signs of competition. This is signs of a very healthy economic situation for this fishery, right? And I think that over time, fishermen have benefited and will continue to benefit from that. So talking a little bit more about, you know, where's the sockeye market right now? Supply-wise, global harvests were up about 10% in 2021, you know, preliminary data, but basically, a lot of that growth came from other fisheries in Alaska. So they nearly doubled the harvest volume, but like I said, 2020 was a really low year. So we're still not, other sockeye fisheries in Alaska are still not really to the level that they've been historically. But that's where the growth came from. So I believe it was like 10% is about 30 million pounds of sockeye, for context. Wholesale prices are at or near record levels. There's a really tight spot inventory. There's not much product available. If you're direct marketing, you've probably learned that in terms of what you've had to pay. You know, so our big concern or hope is that we'll see that be able to be sold through the supply chain at these prices. But it's a really strong sign of demand. I mean, you know, this is really an incredible situation where we're seeing things this tight and prices this high this early in the sales season. And that has a lot to do with high quality fish that you guys are all bringing in and the improvement in that, as well as the marketing that Lonnie and our team will talk about in a little bit. Export volumes values are up. You know, farm salmon is up as well, but we're up more. And of course, in terms of the, you know, what's the downside and the risks here, we know there's been supply chain inflation, shipping's very costly. There's been disruptions, but we're in a good place now. And if you want to learn more and go and kind of nerd out, there's a link here up in the top right corner. I encourage you to check that out, and we keep that updated with good market data. And I can tell a lot of you have from the website traffic, so thank you for doing that, and we'll keep updating it if you keep looking. Okay, so a lot of the frozen H&G sockeye is sold in July and August, and we have data through August, so we don't have it any newer than that. But you know, if you track this back over the years, you can see that in 2021, a lot got sold pretty early in the sales season at a pretty high price. You know, over $4 a pound, well over $4 a pound. So you know, that's about what we saw in 2013, and we know, I mean, that year was a much lower harvest volume, right, and much lower sales. So it's amazing and excellent that we've seen, essentially seeing about the same price at almost 3 times the volume sold, compared to 2013 to 2021. In terms of, again, fishermen ask me all the time, okay, what does this mean for me? Wholesale prices, exports, the dollar, etc. Well, what this chart shows is the gray bars are the prior year's net processing revenue. So the difference between what processors sell it for and what gets paid to fishermen, that sort of gross margin. It's definitely not all profit, but it's a good proxy for how much working capital do they bring into the next year, and how successful were they in the market. And so you can see that there's a pretty strong relationship between pricing for ex-vessel pricing and that performance, that gross margin. And so, we don't know where final prices in 2021 will end up, but what we do know is that 2020 was a very successful sales season for Bristol Bay Sockeye. Probably not so much for other Alaska salmon species, because there wasn't as much as there usually is of them. But yeah, processors did very, very well selling Bristol Bay Sockeye last year, and I think that's explains a lot of the recent announcements that we've seen and the competition by the processing sector. And I apologize. I know I'm moving through this really fast. We have so much to cover, and we do have a section for questions. So we'll have some time for those, and we'll come back around to stuff if you have questions. This is my last slide. Looking at the average retail promotion price. This is products that you would see in the grocery circulars, and we average it out by year, sometimes quarter or month. But it's instructive to look at, okay, how do we stack up versus farm salmon? And you can see that, well, yes, we get a premium. If you've been in a grocery store, you already know that. That's not news. But maybe what is news is that since 2017, we've seen that gap widen out quite a bit. And so I think this really, there's a lot that is wrapped into this. There's a lot that goes into this. It's marketing, it's quality, it's sustainability, it's basic consumer demand. Why is someone willing to pay almost $4 more for Bristol Bay Sockeye, well, most of it's Bristol Bay Sockeye, versus farm salmon? That takes a lot of work in a lot of different areas, right? But the performance is good. It's very good. Can we hold these price levels? We'll see. But I think it's hats off and kudos to the job that we've all done to be where we're at. Processors, fishermen, your RSDA, all of the sustainability groups. It's a team effort, I think. So I'm going to turn it over to our finance chair and treasurer, Reba Temple, to talk about our finances.
Hello, I am Reba Temple. I'm
Hey, Reba. Yeah. Sorry, can you come over here because this is the mic?
Yep.
All right, I'm secretary treasurer of the organization, and so the committee chair of the finance committee. Our staff advisor is Becky McCain. She does everything really. They have to have somebody from the board on there, so that's me. But yeah, she's the one who holds it down. We also have Patrick O'Neill, George Wilson, and John Fairbanks are our other committee members. And we pretty much just make sure that there's enough money in the right bank accounts to do what we need to do. We over the quarterly financials, we audit, do the audits for the state, and yeah, that's kind of our deal. And Becky's going to come on up and give the bulk of it. So I'll just over here.
Thank you, Reba. So I'll just walk through a couple brief slides. I know everyone loves the graphs and the money figures, so As Reba mentioned, she's our treasurer and secretary. We also have George Wilson, who's new on our board, but a great addition to the finance committee, and Patrick O'Neill. So this first slide basically is showing our income, which is based on the assessment that the fishermen get taxed. We receive it the next fiscal year. So that's our assessment since FY15. It was a little bit below 2 million. You can see a big drop in FY16, a healthy 19 and 20, and then the drop that we saw this year based on the FY20 fishing season. The green bar for FY22 is our estimate. Right now, we're estimating around 2.5 million that the org will receive next year. And then that orange line that's kind of straight across, that's the average harvest in millions of pounds, and it's right at 200 million. The numbers on the right side show the assessment amount we received and the harvest in millions of pounds. And if you average that right column, that's where we get the 200 number. So we're looking forward to a good assessment to be received next year. And that's anticipating an average of $1.55 per pound to get that 2.5 million figure. This slide is basically the budget, the expenses of the organization by year and by class. The top blue section is the org outreach category. The yellow is quality. The orange color is admin. The blue at the top is sustainability. The blue at the bottom is org, and the gray is marketing. So you can see through the years, marketing has been a big chunk of our budgets and sustainability in recent years. The line graph going through it is our income. So if you look at the last column for 2022, our income is estimated to be 2.5 million. Yesterday, our board approved a 2022 budget of around 2.3 million with some other projects hopefully coming down the pipeline with proposals to be approved as they come. This here is our BBRSDA, kind of a snapshot of our cash position. As of November this month, we had 5.3 million in cash. We have current commitments budgeted and contracts signed through the end of the year of 932. So that leaves us with available funds of 4.3 million. Our baseline reserve that the board has set aside for emergencies and special projects and needs is 2.5 million. So that is basically untouched by the board or staff or anything. So that leaves us 1.8 million of net funds for operations. We use that to fund the first half of the next fiscal year. And if we subtract half of the approved budget, that leaves us with an additional 718 that the board can use as investment reserves or for special needs or various projects that come between now and whenever they want to fund them. When we add in our July assessment, we anticipate as of August next year, we would have about 3.3 million of net funds available for projects and the work of the organization. This last slide is just a statement that we've put together and the board has looked at for our fiscal responsibility, and I'll just read it. Through prudent management, BBRSDA is poised to enter 2022 with healthy reserves to safeguard against potential downturns in fishery value and sufficient liquidity to act on opportunities which show exceptional potential to increase fishery value. As of October 14, 2021, we project to have approximately 4.4 million on hand to fund operations in calendar year 2022 and onward. This projected financial position includes a baseline reserve of 2.5 million per board policy. That's it for me. We'll be here for questions at the end if anything comes up, but now I'll pass it on to Patrick, who's our marketing chairman.
Welcome, everyone. I'm the chairman for the marketing committee. My name is Patrick O'Neill, as you know. I'd like to introduce our two chairmen, Neil Giri and Sonny Wilson, George Wilson Jr. We have a lot of exciting things up and coming, and Leonia will elaborate on that. So thank you for coming.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. And thank you, Patrick. He did point out that Nels and George Wilson are here. I do want to also give a shout out to Buck Gibbons, Fred Crothamal, and Reed Tenclay. They're also on our committee. And I am Lilani Dunn. I joined the BBRSDA in spring 2020. It was a really exciting job opportunity for me to take. I've been in seafood for over 10 years. I started off with ASME when we were in Seattle. I did retail and food service for them. Then I went over to a reprocessor based in Seattle and then landed here with you. And thank you. I know that MJ thanked you all for a wonderful season, but for the past 2 years that I've been part of the team, it's been great, especially given the pandemic in 2020. We do have a lot to cover. I wanted to introduce our marketing team. We have Alina Fairbanks. She is a Bristol Bay fisherman, but she is also our lead account manager with Rising Tide. They are our agency based in Anchorage, Alaska. They do all of our creative, digital, point of sale. They help us with strategy year after year. They birthed our brand, Bristol Bay Sockeye, in 2016. I know Alina's going to do a brief overview shortly here. And we also have Mark Jones. He's based in Florida. He is our retail consultant. He has made us not only nationally known, but also internationally. We are now in Canada, and we hope to go further than that in years to come. So I would like to invite Alina and Mark up here so we don't have to trek too far.
Yeah, thank you. All right, hi everyone. I'm Alina Fairbanks. Mark Jones here. And first off, I want to talk about why does BBRSDA invest in marketing? Investment in marketing keeps Bristol Bay competitive and a high priority to wholesalers and retailers. It helps consumers find and have an affinity for the salmon, place, and people and brand of Bristol Bay, and to protect the seafood resource of Bristol Bay by promoting it to consumers and creating consistent long-term demand. Our strategic goals include increased consumer awareness and the perceived value of Bristol Bay, stimulate increased demand and loyalty for Bristol Bay Sockeye at retailers and restaurants, and identify and communicate evidence of brand impact and brand strength. Here's a quick overview of how we've grown the brand and the marketing program in the last 6 years, which concludes a plan for each year. Whoa. Let's go to the right slide here. In 2016, the team created the Bristol Bay brand and utilized it for the first time in-store promotions in Boulder, Colorado. The test was a success and grew from there. In 2017, the program was officially launched. In 2018, we grew regionally. In 2019, we expanded channels and focused on nationwide promotions. In 2020, the plan was to go globally, although this plan was altered due to the pandemic. But in 2021, we adapted. We learned about customers pivoting their lifestyles due to the pandemic, and I'll explain that in a few slides of how we've adapted. So as you can see in this graph, in 2016, the brand was utilized for the first time and was promoted at 9 retail stores. In 2017, it grew to 350. In 2018, this was our first retail stores. In 2019, we gained momentum. And in 2021, we had 3,000 store promotions so far. Roughly half of them were fresh promotions, and the other remaining half were refresh. In the past 2 years, a large portion of the fresh promotions were uncontracted, meaning these partners we've partnered with who had the product and the materials in the stores did so without financial incentive from BBRSDA. And we see this as a signal of the strength of the value of the Bristol Bay brand. So with that, I'll pass it to Mark Jones to tell a bit about the retail program.
Thanks, Alina. Thank you again. I'm Mark Jones, and been working on behalf of the BBRSDA for the last 5 years. I consider it an honor to be here. So thank you to you all, the harvesters, to the board, MJ, and the staff at Andy and the staff at the BBRSDA. It's been a real interesting, fun, challenging run. So basically, what this slide shows is what I bring to the table through my 25 years at ASME. We wanted to connect the Bristol Bay brand with retailers across the U.S. And so this is a representation geographically of where we've done some work, returning new partners. So I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really managed to cover a good portion of the U.S. and now with Canada coming on with Save On Foods, who just came off a really nice, successful promotion. In fact, I'm told, I wasn't on the call, but they're interested in also, they usually do frozen promotions, which is great, but their discussion with the fresh program in 22, which would be fantastic. So multiple promotions with them is always the goal for them coming back. An example of one of the partners we work with, Costco. I'm sure you're all very familiar with Costco. Just a little discussion here quickly about the packaging is Skin Pack. It's a new category for them 4 years ago. I just met with them this morning. Extremely happy with the program. We see more and more of this type of packaging at retail. I was just having a discussion with Roger over there at the table this morning. This really shows the quality, the color, and just texture of the Bristol Bay Sockeye. So you see this packaging not only at Costco but other retailers as well. So it's been a real good thing, and we're going to continue to work with them. Another account, national account, as we grew from regional to try to work nationally, Whole Foods. This is sort of a grind to stay in touch and communicate and talk to these retail buyers, vice presidents of marketing, perishable coordinators, their marketing teams, and the distributors that distribute all the product for these retailers. So that's another whole thing, part of the equation. But we were really successful getting Whole Foods to talk specifically about the Bristol Bay Sockeye fishery this year. And that was with the result of a lot of help from RTC and Lalani as well. So we're real thankful for that. And I think they're going to continue to be a good partner. A couple of years ago, our goal was to get into Southern California. We did it. We got into Albertsons Safeway in Southern California, partnering with Santa Monica Seafoods for branding on the label with Bristol Bay Sockeye. The Santa Monica and many others now have these machines that Skin Pack the portions. Some are doing the fillets, some are doing the smaller 6-ounce portions. The price point on those portions is well for Albertsons' position in the Southern California marketplace. So we'll be doing this again with them for the Lenten season for 2022. Rose Hours, a great little regional chain in Eastern Washington. They're big, huge fans of Bristol Bay, all things Alaska. Just they consider Alaska local, their backyard. They love it, and they create entire sections of Bristol Bay sockeye salmon multiple times throughout the year. They're just coming off a promotion. So again, just because if you don't have 1,000 stores, you're not worth it. That's not the case at all. We like working with everybody who wants to tell this fantastic story. This is just a new and returning partners. King Soopers is a division of Kroger. It's much more productive to work regionally with Kroger than to go to Cincinnati and try to call them corporate, which they're managing 3,000 stores and they can't do too much anyway from a corporate basis. So King Soopers, Harris Teeter are both Kroger divisions. Save On Foods in Canada and Big Y is our first venture up into New England. They're on promotion now, November all the way through December. So we're starting to get some photos in, and they're working through a big distributor in the North Atlantic to bring in the Bristol Bay Sockeye. And my last slide here is just the distributor outreach. This is a very important part of how we grew this brand. Seattle Fish, they handle King Soopers. Canfisco, Save On, they helped us get into Save On in Canada. Santa Monica couldn't do the California market without Santa Monica Seafoods. Pacific, I'm sure you're obviously familiar with them. They do a lot of work in the Pacific Northwest. And North Coast is the big distributor up in Boston. I toured their facility, watched them cutting, processing, and and skin packing Bristol Bay sockeye salmon in their plant as recently as a month and a half, 2 months ago. So with that, I really appreciate your time today. I know how busy you all are, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Sure, happy to answer any questions.
We're going to do it at the very end.
Okay.
Sorry,
yeah.
we're going to go through all the programs.
So Mark just explained the importance of distributor outreach and relationship building, and it's the same with processors. Trade shows such as PME and the Boston Seafood Show in March are great ways to connect with processors and showcase the Bristol Bay brand. So you can see our beautiful booth at PME and the materials that we hand out there. And we also sent our processors care packages because the Bristol Bay Seafood Show was canceled. So. Where's the mouse?
I think the view might have changed.
One moment.
Which one is it?
Oh, it's showing.
Yeah, I think it's that one. No, that's it. Yes.
And my notes are gone.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Another piece of the puzzle worth focusing on is brand building retail activity. The question is, are retailers, distributors, and wholesalers telling the story of the Bristol Bay brand and showcasing it to their audience? The answer is yes. A few examples are Hy-Vee, which included a full-page magazine spread about Bristol Bay and the Harvester Reba Temple over there. And another, thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate it. And big retailers such as Whole Foods tells the story of Bristol Bay online, showcasing the Bristol Bay brand, and did this without financial incentive. And again, we see this as a signal of the strength and value of the Bristol Bay brand. It's critical to create and continue our relationships with industry members online. So we continue to focus on an online presence to make it easy for partners to learn about the program. A couple examples of this include a dedicated marketing website at marketing.bristolbaysockeye.org. We produce an industry-specific newsletter, increased our accessibility to the media library, online point-of-sale order form for both retailers and direct marketers, and a new buyer's guide form online for retailers to refer to, and a wholesale inquiry form to collect sales leads. Here's a snapshot of the buyer's guide that we created. The guide provides some context of Bristol Bay and explains that it's certified sustainable, includes nutrition information, retail display and best practices, and explain the different product forms and so on. We have this buyer's guide at the booth at PME, so please grab one when you're visiting PME. Here's a few of our most popular point of sale items that retailers and direct marketers love to display that are attention grabbing and help tell the Bristol Bay story and assist with brand awareness. The Grundon's apron and black hat remain our most popular items for retailers to order because employees behind the seafood counter can wear them and begin a conversation with an interested buyer. With the pandemic, retail sales of frozen salmon have increased, so we focused on ensuring that consumers had a good experience cooking salmon at home, maybe for the first time. Studies have shown that during the pandemic, consumers have been more health conscious than ever. So with that in mind, we created a cooking techniques microsite that shows the step-by-step process of cooking with different recipes. We worked with influencers, experienced chefs, experts to create video content with simple how-to videos and focus on how to cook perfect salmon without intimidation. Another example of how we support retailers and direct marketers is the online media library, where stakeholders can find high quality content such as retail training resources, videos, social media graphics, recipes and photos, and more. The screenshot on the right is the slide Find Your Fish landing page. A consumer, restaurant owner, grocery store manager, and other parties can find salmon based on their location. They type in their zip code and find a list of direct marketers, grocery stores, and distributors near them. And if you're not sure if you're in this database, please check with me after this meeting. We maintain consumer-directed social media channels on Facebook and Instagram. Here are our top 3 performing Facebook posts in the last few months. Instagram and Facebook are critical platforms to consistently reach our audience and promote the Bristol Bay brand. We develop the monthly content for Bristol Bay social channels and manage the posts and interactions with the audience to make sure that the messages and comments are telling a positive story. And I'll just add that consumers love hearing from the fleet. And so if you'd like to tell your story, please contact me or meet up with Francis later. We work with both industry and consumer media outlets to tell the story of Bristol Bay. This example is from an article in Food and Wine that quoted Leilani and explained all the hard work that Bristol Bay was doing in order for us to safely harvest salmon amidst during the pandemic and ensure that our marketing partners can feel good about telling the positive story of Bristol Bay even in a pandemic. Campaigns let us continually offer new materials to partners that address of the moment interests and concerns of their customers. For example, the Fast, Wild, Easy campaign was developed during a time when frozen seafood sales had soared in the pandemic, and we knew we had a lot of new customers who wanted easy, non-fussy ways to try salmon. The Health Full campaign was developed to inspire customers who are focused on supporting their health through food. We partnered with registered dietitian nutritionalists called the Real Food Dietitians. They created 5 recipes with Bristol Bay Sockeye and posted about it on their blog and social media channels. These campaigns enhance our overall message to inspire customers to reach and buy wild salmon over other proteins. And our social media channels and platforms are incredibly useful to showcase these kinds of campaigns. We created social media graphics and programmed social ads on Bristol Bay's Facebook page to promote direct marketers and their business. These direct marketers gave us their target audience, overall messaging, and click-through links. The marketing program often supports one-off projects such as the DC Salmon Week that contractor Alexa Tonkovich managed and worked with Leilani and us on. And our team designed the Salmon Week logo, poster, and worked closely with Alexa to assist participating restaurants during the Salmon Week event and then who served Bristol Bay salmon. We created a digital asset toolkit for participating restaurants that included custom social graphics, talking points, Salmon Week assets, and more. We partnered with 8 food influencers in the DC area to promote this event on their social media, in which they called out Salmon Week and tagged the participating restaurant that they chose and tagged Bristol Bay social media. The Sustainability Digital Toolkit project was created in response to Seaspiracy, a documentary film that got a lot of attention this year and criticized the wild-caught commercial fishing industry and promoted inaccurate information about sustainability. The toolkit was shared with direct marketers and retailers and contained social graphics, talking points, and additional resources to respond to the film's claims. We know in this room that Bristol Bay is highly sustainable fishery, and so it's critical that we share this knowledge with people outside the industry. This is also a great example of how the RSDA marketing program overlaps with other committees and that we can utilize each other's work and messaging. And with that, I will pass it off to Leilani.
Selena. We are almost done, I promise. Elena just mentioned that we know our product. We know it's delicious, good for you, sustainably caught, handled with care for high quality. Our job is to let the world know that. And so that's what we're really trying to do. Our program's goal is to increase the demand of Bristol Bay Sockeye salmon. With that, I do want to touch on our most recent partnership with BBNC, Bristol Bay Native Corporation, and Bristol Wild Seafoods. We have a wild market in the new Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, home of the Kraken. This is the website for you to peruse. There's more info. There's some footage in the video we were playing earlier and we'll be playing at the booth. The Climate Pledge Arena is supposed to have over 7 million visitors from around the world within the first year. Within the first couple weeks, there are hundreds and thousands already between concerts and Kraken games. So super exciting. This is Chef Molly. She's the executive chef that does all the food of the Climate Pledge Arena. I put in a sample of the menu at the Bristol Bay Wild Market. You can see we have 2 menu items calling out Bristol Bay Sockeye. We have tacos and a filet baguette. Super, super big splash was a tradition that was born within this partnership. I don't know if all of you are hockey fans or not, but with each home games, there's 3 star players, and the Kraken asked us to help them create a plush Bristol Bay Sockeye for the players to sign and throw out to the crowd. So each player tosses it, and it made huge waves within the NHL and ESPN. And the tag, I should mention, has 5 or 6 sustainability points about the Bristol Bay area and our fishery. Yeah.
Could you ask him not to grab it by the tail, please?
I know. Don't worry. I met him in the parking lot and told him, no, we don't do that. Here's a fun little photo of the prototype. And on your way out today, please grab a co-branded Kraken Bristol Bay Wild Market shirt. They are over there. They're organized and sized, and they are for you, our members. So thank you so much. My door is always open. Our door is always open. There's only 4 of us, but we're here and our ears are open as well. So thank you very much for the time today.
Yeah. Hi, Mark Niver, Fishing Vessel Surrender in Bristol Bay. I'm on just newly on the board for the BBRSDA. I'm part of the director of the sustainability program. I have to admit that the main reason why I even got on to the board and everything was I'm pretty adamant against the Pebble mine. And some of the things that we do fund is the fight against the Pebble mine. You know, it's my opinion that if the mine comes in, that the fishery will definitely start to degrade pretty quickly. So, so that's one of the things that we support definitely is the fight against Pebble mine. We've got Fritz Johnson, Nels, Kelly Steyer, Nicholas Dowie, Robert Buckmeyer, just newly on the committee, and Andy Wink is our director. We work on and fund a lot of projects. The Port Moller test fishery. We support some studies on the watershed about king salmon. We support some film studies. We are starting a net recycling program. And I have to say, I got to give some kudos to MJ. He's a great board of director. I tell you what, this guy puts in a ton of effort along with Andy. But I mean everybody. But MJ is just on the ball about all this stuff. So what else do we need to talk about, Andy?
I'll take it. Yeah, I'll kind of give some detail to these different projects here. And thanks, Mark. It's great. The committee's been excellent. They give really good direction and oversight and really good vision. And then staff and contractors and partners get to come in and do the execution. And we're lucky to have some amazing sustainability partners. You know, BBRSDA is a very small organization, And to the extent we're able to be successful, a lot of that credit goes to the partners that we have in the work that we do. So Michael Link's going to come up a little bit later and talk more about the Bristol Bay Fisheries Collaborative and the Port Moller test fishery, but that's one of the key things that we fund. And the core programs that otherwise would have gotten cut out of the state budget, BBFC, which gets funding from harvesters through RSDA, processors, as well as BBEDC, has made sure that that research and management continued, and probably would have seen less harvests if that had been cut. We've in recent years had a second vessel at Port Moller, which really saved the Port Moller test fishery with COVID and with delays to the Pandalis, and it's given us much more data. Onboard genetics funding, that was something that came together very quickly. Frankly, I was a little bit nervous to see if it was going to work. But, Michael and Jeff and all your guys' team, incredible. That came off so well. And we're really excited about that onboard genetics program. So Lindsay and Kat did a great job talking about Pebble. One of the things we do also is try to represent fishermen in the fight against Pebble. We know that not everybody is against it, but the vast majority of Bristol Bay fishermen are. And the science and the track record is very clear and compelling as to why this mine would present such a huge risk to the fishery and all of your livelihoods. So we're part of the Bristol Bay Coalition, along with the tribes, NGOs, sport fish. I mean, there's probably over 24 groups part of that coalition, and we've really been working together well lately. Like I said, we represent the fleet, and it's important to have an organization to step in and be that representative. There's times when you need to be at the table collectively and have some organization behind it, and that's what we're able to provide. Things like writing letters on behalf of, those really do work, and they really do mean a lot when they have the weight of the fleet behind it, especially one that's this big and this important. Other things that we fund in terms of Pebble, we've funded research, we've engaged in the permitting process, and like Mark said, we've supported some films that really put a lot of visuals, towards, okay, what is the risk here? What are we talking about? And like I said, Lindsay and the tribes and Kat did a great job talking about where we're at now. The permit's been denied, the 404C process is resuming, and we'll see what happens next. But as far as Pebble goes, it's looking very good. And a couple of years ago, it was not. So just really thank you to all the people that have been working year-round, every day on this. It's definitely paid off, and so we're excited about where it's going. We funded a lot of different salmon research projects with the University of Washington in recent years. Dr. Schindler and his team have been able to genetically map stocks of sockeye in Bristol Bay using the strontium isotopes in the otolith bones. It's extremely cool and really giving us a lot of answers about the stock and the diversity, and just kind of how it changes over time, where they're coming from. They're not all coming from the same place in the same years, turns out. So it's those types of things that really inform a lot of other activities that, in the end, it's all about more sustained yield, right? As healthy as this ecosystem and run can be. We've got some really exciting data to share on the life cycle assessment. I don't know if you guys have seen in some of the trade press, but GAP and the SC processors did a life cycle assessment on pollock. It comes out very good. It's a very high volume fishery. Ours is a very high volume salmon fishery. And when you compare us to other proteins, Bristol Bay sockeye, it's very environmentally friendly compared to other proteins. So that's probably going to be published within the next month or two. Once it is published in academic journal, we'll start rolling that data out more. We've also had UW been working on run timing and run size and timing forecasting, and they're using new developments in AI and machine learning to run that data, as much data as we can, through those applications to see if we can get a better sense of how many fish are coming back, when are they coming back, and where are they coming back. And I don't want to oversell it or overpromise it, because this is not, it's not going to give you exact answers. There's a lot of margin of error, there's a lot of uncertainty, but we want to get as best of a forecast and prediction as we can. And that's what we're trying to do. And they're experts at it. They're using the newest methods and technologies to do that. So very cool. And the film that was running here, as you guys were coming in, it's called Mosaic. The UW produced it. Chris Boatwright, Daniel Schindler narrated it. Jason Chang provided, incredible videos and visuals. And Tim Troll with Bristol Bay Heritage Land Trust, they were funding partners on that. And thank you guys. That's a great video that'll be useful for many years. And if you stop by our booth, you can probably see that, and we'll have a link up to it soon, because sometimes it's hard to get audio to work in these types of venues. But so that's about it for sustainability. I'll have Francis come up and talk about quality, as well as Reba, right?
I'm Reba Temple. I'm the chair of the quality committee. We have Mark Niver also on the quality committee. There, Patrick O'Neill's over there. Mark Buckley is over there. Katie Bursch is also on the committee, but is not here. And then we have Pat Glab as our advisor. And as you can see, our goal is to maximize harvest value by improving the quality of Bristol Bay salmon. So we do a little bit of everything, just kind of trying to figure out what's the best bang for our buck is getting the quality up. And yeah, so I will hand it over to Francis Bursch, who's our staff advisor, who, will tell you about our programs here.
Thank you, Reba. Thank you all. I'm Francis, program specialist with BBRSDA and a lifelong Bristol Bay fisherman as well. I'm going to jump right into it. One of our projects that's been the last 2 years is using the Certified Quality Reader, and that's a product by Seafood Analytics, and it's this tool you see in the photo. And this tool uses electrodes to take objective measurements, and it is measuring what is in the cell and what is outside of the cell in fish. So as salmon degrades, more that exits the cell, and that's how it's able to measure the quality of the salmon. They were 13 of these tools were in Bristol Bay this season, and they were the QCs on tenders were in every district and using them. They measured over 10,000 fish this summer, and looking at not just the quality reading, but some correlative data as well. So looking at the temperature and other handling practices and the data. We're still working with them to put out more of the data and make it approachable and accessible to you all, because it's really cool, some really cool science that's being collected there. But the brief overview is the data really validates the positive effects of best handling practices. It makes a difference, and it shows on here. Next is RSW Apprentice Program. 2021 was the first year that we had this program up and running. And the kind of short-term goal of the program is just to expand capacity and get more hands on the ground ready to help with startups and other RSW issues. And then long-term goals is involving and training more RSW technicians in the Bay to keep that resource for us all for years to come. We helped fund the wages for 3 apprentices, and they worked with these 3 companies here: Central Peninsula, Stay Cool, and Refrigeration of Alaska. This is something the board would like to see continue and grow, so we will be working on that to see it in action again for 2022. Ice projects. BBRSDA had 4 ice-related projects this year in partnership with BBEDC and Trident, the Bristol Maid operated in the Nushagak district, in partnership with BBEDC and OBI Seafoods, the Bristol Lady was in Naknek. We supported an ice shuttle moving ice within the Nushagak district, and we have discounted insulated ice bags, and we do have some budget remaining for 2021. So BBRSDA will refund 65% of the cost of your insulated ice bags if that's something that's helpful to you. And there's info on our website in our quality section. The processor survey is a survey we've done in partner. Northern Economics conducts the survey for the last 13 years, and they pull the processors on raw product data, fleet information, ice production volumes, and chilling methods. And this chart is really impressive just to see the change in not that many years. So it starts off in 2008, and just 16% of the pack of all the fish coming out of the drift fleet was chilled, and now it's 94%. And you can see kind of the breakdown. Most is chilled with RSW. There's 11% chilled with ice, and then still have about just 6% that's not getting chilled. A lot of these programs will be ongoing in 2022, and there's kind of an additional priority to focus on some research on just, where can we have the most positive impact in our quality. So that's something the board and quality committee are working on in the year to come. All right, that brings us to the outreach program. Fritz, do you want to join me for a moment?
Yes.
I'll be here.
Okay. Chris Johnson from Dillingham, chair of the outreach committee, which consists of myself, Reba Temple, Mark Niver, and 2 new additions to this committee, Jamie Linscheid, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, and Melanie Brown. Our 2 new members are of the FetNet community, and Francis will tell you a little more about that. But the outreach committee, it became apparent we needed to do more communications with the fleet. One time when I think there was a meeting in Dillingham, the annual spring meeting, where one of the members said, asked after a presentation, well, where do you guys get your money? And, sort of struck me as odd that this person, we knew he existed, but didn't realize that he was paying to keep us in business here. But the outreach committee is to engage with the fleet, communications back and forth between the membership and the organization. And we do this through our online presence, waypoints and regular outreach to the members, most of which Frances here is in charge of. So I will turn it over to her, and she can tell you, the many things we're involved in. So thank you, Frances.
Thank you, Fritz. All right, get right into it. I will speak to more of this as we go through, but the market information, so all that great data that Andy showed at the beginning is something he keeps updated, and we share on our website and as opportunities come up. So that's always there for you. The KDLG Fishery Reports is one of our outreach programs. We know how critical those are when we're out on the water in the summer. Bristol Bay Sockeye Salmon merch is apparel, hats, hoodies, and t-shirts that we sell online at cost. And the idea with that program is just to have, garments for you all as fleet members to be out there with your brand, the Bristol Bay Sockeye Salmon brand, just because fishermen are the best ambassadors for this awesome salmon. I think the rest of these I will talk about in a second. The last one, just submitting ideas and proposals. I just always encourage people to, if you have an idea, we're here to listen, and that's where a lot of these programs stem from, is ideas that you all have for ways to improve the fishery. COVID aid has been a big factor in our outreach in 2020 and 2021. We've just been working to kind of navigate all these different programs and provide information to the fleet. A a lot of these have wrapped up, but one that is still in the works is the NOAA Fisheries CARES Act, and it is being administered by the Pacific Marine Fisheries Council. The website's there, and but it's by state. So if you live in Oregon, California, or Washington, you need to apply with Pacific Marine Fisheries Council, but to your state. And Alaska residents and those who live in other states not on the Pacific coast can apply to Alaska. A lot of eligibility requirements there, and it is still looking back at the 2020 season, but if that's not on your radar, that's worth checking to see if you might be eligible for some support that way. Also kind of stemming from these different COVID programs, it's come to our attention that just tax strategy and how to be smart with your commercial fishing business is not easy to navigate, especially for those just starting, but not only them, there's a lot to learn along the way. So we will be putting out some information and working with tax and CPA professionals who are familiar with commercial fishing to provide some presentations, and we'll also have some articles in our upcoming newsletters as a way to get that started and share some information with you all. The crew training program was a pilot project in last spring in Naknek. A member, Anthony Vlahovic, brought this idea to us and led the program. We had just 6 students this year and focused on knot tying, net mending, safety, kind of all those initial things that helped green crew get a little leg up before they headed out on the boats for the season. This was really successful. We got great reviews from the captains of the crew that participated and the crew themselves, and this is something we'd like to expand for next season as well. Fisherman profiles, Alina mentioned this, but it's a way, it's a couple questions and a request for photos, and it's just a way to help tell fishermen's stories, and we use this with our marketing and telling the story with consumers. So everyone is invited to make one of these profiles. Our marketing experts tell us that content that features fishermen gets a lot of interest and clicks. So if you would like to share your story, we welcome it and happy to help you out there. There's links on our website to do so. Waypoints newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter we put out by email, and if you're not signed up, I highly encourage you to do so. It's just once a month, and it's kind of a big update of what our program activities have been, but also opportunities and news that's pertinent to the fishery. I think probably you all are here, you probably are getting our correspondence, but share it with your radio group and friends, and we're love to get everyone catching the news from us. All right, I believe that brings me to the end of outreach, and I think I'll pass it back to Andy.
So we had a board meeting yesterday and finalized our FY22 budget. We've still got some things that we, will likely be added onto the budget, but it's, the bulk of the budget has been set. And so I want to go through that here in just a few minutes. But I also want to mention, we've got some really nice swag. The marketing team and the outreach team mentioned it, and we've got some amazing partners here in the room. And so please, even if you're not a member and you're a partner, take some of that with you. We're very thankful for the amount of collaboration that we're able to get and the everybody that we work with. So so don't be shy about that. And I will. So let's talk about what FY22 looks like. Our marketing budget, $974,000. Going to keep doing a lot of the great work that RTC and Mark Jones have done, and of course Lalani heading all that up. We saw a lot of you at the Symphony of Seafoods last night. We're a major funder of that event. It's been a challenge to have that pulled off the last few years, as you guys can imagine. But what the Symphony does is create an amazing elevator for new products to come to market. And you never know what's going to be the next thing that's going to require a whole bunch of Sockeye to make it. And so I talking with one of the processors presidents, earlier this year, and I said, what do you think the best thing we can do for the fishery is in terms of marketing? He said, get more products and more shelf space in more places. The more channels we have to sell out there, the more customers we have, the higher we can sell it for, and that'll, then the more money we have to pay for fish. So the Symphony is an excellent way to do that, and we're really supportive of that program. So if any of you have a really great idea for a Sockeye product, please get it in there. And if you want to talk to Keith about how to really succeed in the Symphony program, he's got a pretty good track record going. They won last night. Congratulations. Okay, so Lonnie mentioned the Kraken partnership. That's continuing. We'd like to do some more food service marketing in FY22, COVID dependent and all that. It's a little bit of a shame that Sockeye's not on more menus. We'd like to see that change, but it's not as simple as you might think either. So that's in the plans. Quality, we've got 242,000 roughly budgeted for that. Looking to do more the RSW apprenticeship program. That went really well last year. Francis did an incredible job getting that all to come together. We had 3 RSW companies that brought on an apprentice, and that, it's really starting to increase the RSW tech capacity, and we know that's a key issue. Quality research, there's a lot more that we can be doing there. We put some budget towards that, so we plan to. Ice barges, we're going to continue to support that because some fishermen need ice, and ice, as Mike Persero has often said, and he's very right. I mean, a lot of times you look at the numbers in those projects, and it's like a 10-to-1 increase. If we put down this much funding, the fishermen get usually 10 to 13 times that back in quality bonuses. So that's a high ROI project. Of course, the processor survey gives us a lot of the data we need to make good decisions and also see how things are changing or not changing. Outreach, got 85,180 budgeted for that, for those projects. I should mention this is budgets for projects, and then we also have some other budgets for admin, staff, travel, kind of different things that you need to do to keep everything running. But most of where we spend our money is on projects that are done by, a lot of the work is done by contractors. So outreach, KDLG fisheries reports, I don't know if anybody else really funds much of that. We're definitely the major funder there and very useful for the fleet. We've been doing it a long time and we'll continue to do it. Hey, quick show of hands. Did anybody hear the Waypoints radio feed segments this summer? Maybe, maybe not. Couple? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, they're on our website. I'd encourage you to check those out. We had a lot of really good ones. We had 6 episodes. MJ and I were on with Rob Ryerson from TradeX Foods, talking about markets, and so really good content there. All right, I've got to speed this up, so we're gonna kind of hop. We don't have a lot of sustainability yet. We're working with commercial fishermen for Bristol Bay, continuing to do that on habitat protection. But in terms of other things we're thinking about, potential projects, some of them, very likely to happen. Obviously, optimizing sustained harvest yield is a big deal. We're going to talk about that a little bit more next. The Nishgak Kings, keeping an eye on the Nuyukuk hydro power concept, and that's just one where somebody needs to engage there. The fleet's part of the community and part of the economic, part of the industry there. Excuse me, part of the economy. That's the word I was going for. You'd think I'd remember that, right? Sustainable packaging options and opportunities. That's one that's really exciting. Trying to leverage graduate research, and if we can put a little bit of funding towards that, we can probably get a lot of really good research in terms of bang for the buck, and answer questions that otherwise, we don't know the answers to, and it could be a really good way to go about answering those. So we're looking into that. We'd like to have a sustainability conference or summit. So we've got some money in the budget, or excuse me, not yet, but we've thought about that. If you have ideas about that, you should talk more to MJ. He's, you know, it's kind of his baby, but I think it's a really great idea. And then we'll see how the tax planning and resources and education goes. You know, we're trying to do as much for members as possible. At the end of the day, it's either saving money, making money, or making things work more efficiently, right? And tax is part of that. And then I want to announce that yesterday we made some slight modifications to our bylaws so that we can kind of enter the new the new century and do electronic voting for board seats. So we've been doing paper ballots for a long time. Sometimes they don't make it to you. I've had people that said, I missed the ballot in my mailbox. Can I get another one? No, I'm sorry, you can't. I don't, our policy and our bylaws, like, it's just, my hands are tied, and it sucks. I don't want to have to say that, but that's, yeah, so we want to make that more flexible and easier for our members to engage with us. And I really think this will do that. So, you know, as the next few months go on, you'll get a text notice about how the voting is going to work. We'll put it on our website. We'll put it on waypoints. You'll get a postcard. So there will be plenty of opportunity to vote, and it'll be easier. So talking about optimizing sustainable harvest yield, that's obviously a huge issue. It's probably the biggest one that we're facing, you know, over the next year or so. We've got, you know, we all know the forecast is massive. So we've had a lot of collaboration recently with Fish and Game, BBRSDA, individual fishermen, processors. You know, we've been trying to put our heads together. How do we catch all these fish that are coming, you know, and not have over escapement? So, you know, some ideas it kind of fall into two buckets. There's either stuff that is, you know, needs to happen at Board of Fish, and there's stuff that is kind of everything else. And it's not all in Fish and Game by any stretch either. You know, some of it could be more tender, some of it could be more processing capacity, some of it could be more harvesting capacity. You know, Tim has mentioned to me, smaller web catches more fish, and sometimes he needs fishermen to catch a lot of fish so that we don't have over escapement. So it's, you know, there's a lot of bricks in the wall here, and the projection is we got a lot of fish coming. So it's a great problem to have. You know, and I think we're open to ideas. If you have an idea that's going to create the, you know, better ability to increase the sustained harvest yield, please email it to info@bbrsda.com. We want to get that in the mix. So, you know, part of what we'll probably be seeing coming out with this is doing research and investigation into, you know, all these different ideas, and we've got several on the table. I don't have time to go into them in depth here, but you know, we're going to need to put some research and investigation into those to make sure that we're not kind of going too fast here and shooting before we're aiming. But after that, there will be outreach, communication, and eventually action. And you know, some of these are things that need to happen or should happen before next season. Board of Fish stuff, it's a longer cycle, right? But we are doing everything we can and reaching out and having all the different parties involved and at the table, because it's a big challenge. But we can't not do it. I mean, you know, for the amount of over escapement last year, it's probably going to wind up being worth about $80 million, which I haven't checked, but that would probably be like the second most valuable fishery in Alaska, is the fish you guys didn't catch. So for context, so, you know, the industry, harvesters, processors, management, we have to do something, right? It's just too much of a you know, foregone. But that word foregone, though, I should mention, you know, it's not always gonna reduce productivity, especially in a place like the Noosh. You know, it's a big watershed. So, that 80 million, it's not all foregone. It's not black and white. It's a little bit gray, but the upshot is we know there's been more fish coming. We think there's going to be more harvest to be had, but we're kind of maxed out. It's a challenge. So that's our presentation. We're running a little bit behind, but I've been told that we can keep the room for maybe an extra 15 or 20 minutes. So we did have some time built in for questions and discussion. So let's have at it. I saw Dan's hand go up first, and then we'll go to Mark. Mike.
I guess I'm 80 now, and I've got 40 years in the fishery. And I'm right from the get-go. I've been to the BBRSDA. I think it's fabulous things. I particularly appreciate the movement to sustainability. We had a enhancement tax that went down lot 5149. I think there's some habitat potential. And I appreciate as in the 20 years or so as president of the Trip Management, we really did some great things with the set. And we got through the allocation. And I know we can't necessarily go through the RSDA lobby at the Board of Fish, but I don't believe there's ever been a full research of all the years of allocation and how it's come out. I know that it's certainly got drip letters and protected drip letters, and we've got millions of extra fish, but once in a while it seems like there's a few situations with looking through of whether we ought to revisit or tweak that there's a potential for at least keeping the pressure on that the allocation is maintained fairly for drip letters and for set nets. I'd just like to bring that one up. I appreciate your help with a few ideas and doing our very best. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, everything's got to be put on the table. Some things get taken off, but maximizing sustained harvest yield, which I've been told from Fish and Game, that trumps allocation. Like that's what we're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do. So, I can let them speak a little bit more to that. But yeah, there's definitely a relationship there. One affects the other. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. Mike?
You talked about onboard genetic funding, but I didn't quite catch all of that. Are we talking about moving genetic studies right onto the fish, onto the boat, instead of flying everything to Anchorage? Now we're waiting on weather. Now we're
Ships passing in the night. They literally have to hand them off,
right,
and then get them on a plane.
Talking about doing that just right on the ship.
These guys did that on board as well or better in some cases than it was done in Anchorage.
What percent was done this year?
Mike, you're going to learn so much from these guys.
Yeah, I'll let they're going to talk about it in a few minutes. So sorry. Well,
Great.
I know. Sorry. Brad.
Brad Angus and I own and operate the Nova Upton. I never thought in a million years I'd be asking about this, but I'm a little worried about the chums. Last year I was really shocked. I spent my season in Ushigak. My processor is always more than happy to give me on the amount of chums that I catch, but last year I had 0% I think my worst day was like 0.19%. I had no idea how they calculated that, but I'm really, that caught my attention. So that coupled with the issue of Ushigak Kings, what are we doing in terms of sustainability and trying to keep a track and monitoring that?
We've talked a lot about Ushigak Kings. No, I know what you mean, and I think there's better people in the room to speak to that than myself. And they're, Michael's coming up, Fishing Game's coming up, so I'm gonna defer that one to them. But it is, I've spent many phone calls on Ushigak Kings. But chums, thanks for bringing up chums. Anybody else? Dune.
Have you guys done much ROI research on your own marketing efforts for like dollars spent in BBRSDA? We've got this appreciation and value. And then if we miraculously get fishermen to vote to make it 2%, then all of a sudden
does it go up even higher, right? Yeah. Oh gosh. There's so much going. I'm kind of having a blank spot, but I will say it's tough to draw a real straight direct connection. But like you saw in that chart about, when the wholesale value does better, it costs what it costs to process the fish and sell it and all that, but you guys are the raw material producers. So the more valuable it is, people fill that space, as we've actually seen. And so I think there is a very good ROI there. Without it being worth more, I mean, you guys can't get paid more. So that's just the
Imagine if we had
fact,
another $5
right?
million.
Right, if we had more. I don't know, it's a good question. I mean, I think we do a lot with what we have. Could we do even more? It's come up, and I don't know, there might be opportunities to see if we like really push on something really hard. A lot of, with these promotions, we might spend $500, we might spend maybe $10,000. But we'll see. Yeah, I don't know, it's a good question. MJ.
Dune, I got an answer for you. On our marketing efforts, we average about 35% of that. So before the marketing, it might be 10,000. After it's done, don't make me take my shoes off, but 35%.
Yeah, and actually that's been what it's kind of been for the program. Last year was, I think, like 52 or 55%. So, what I was saying is when we do a promotion, what they sold it, how much they sold before, raise it by that much. So it's very effective. MJ? Or sorry, Mike.
Yeah. I remember when we first started, I've been involved with the RSA for about 6 years. I was the board chair for 3. And when we first started the marketing team, one of the people that were pitching to us from the marketing agency said, we don't really know what you could get from marketing, but we know what happens when you don't. And I think you could take the same comment to the RSDA itself and say that, this organization is like a trade union. It represents the interests of the 1,800 drift permit holders and the industry at large, really. And so, the senators are along because we have common interests, and the industry gets a seat at the table in many, many places where it never would without the RSDA being engaged at the level it is. And I can tell you from going in to the agents, to the association 6 years ago, that this iteration of the RSDA is so highly evolved compared to where we were at 6 years ago. And watching the team here and all the different moving parts, it's just really impressive to see this. And a good example is just the room we're in right now compared to the prior member meetings. And there's much better examples, but I think that the organization, I'm really excited to have this group of 7 representing us, and the staff, Andy, his leadership, and the staff. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what's been done. There's been a lot of money spent over time since the RSA was created, and I believe it's being spent better and bringing more force to the table. And you can see now we have an industry where, not totally giving credit to the RSA for this, but now we're not as volume sensitive. 70 million fish forecast 10 years ago would have dropped our price to 40 cents. And instead we have a really robust marketplace. A lot of fish is going a lot of different directions. We're away from the commodity model, which we're vulnerable to like cartel purchasing, no relationship with the cost of harvesting or processing in the ultimate price of the fish. And we're just, gradually moving away from so many of the bad models that we were in 10 years ago. Hats off to you guys. Good job.
Yeah, everybody's been team effort. I think we'll probably have to keep moving along. So Michael, why don't you come on up? You're next. And if anybody has more questions or want to talk about stuff, we're in booth 4119 in the Alaska Hall, kind of right at the entrance.
We're going to be installing a dump tank too, so in your quarters.
And if you didn't get an annual report, we'll have these up by the tables too.
Oh, the slide? Yes. Oh, good. Thank you. My name's Michael Link, Executive Director of the Bristol Bay Science and Research Institute, and I'm going to give a 5 or 10 minute update on Port Moller test fishery. It's a collaborative project with us, the department, and it's funded by processors in the RSDA. This is going to be really brief, but I'm glad that somebody asked a question about the genetics. I'll just kind of give 1 or 2 slides about what happened in 2021 and then describe what we're going to spend more time trying to explain what we're going to try to do in 2022. Those who follow the updates recognize this catch index table. So along the vertical are the dates from June 10th to the middle of July. Across horizontally are all the indices. That's fish per hour converted based on our 30-minute sets. And so this is the effort that we mounted in 2021. In an unprecedented way, we had more downtime than we ever have had. We lose 1 to 3 or 4 days to weather every year. I highlighted in yellow for this presentation all the days and station sets, significant station missing sets on here. It was a bad year for weather, as everybody in this room, I'm sure, knew. We had it really bad at Port Moller. Highlighted in orangish salmon color there is the effort by the second vessel, which is funded by BBSRI and the RSDA. The Ocean Cat and does the offshore transect and kind of fills in whenever the inshore boat couldn't make any station coverage. So that's what we did. So it was a lot of horizontal coverage across space, but through time we had some pretty big gaps, including this really big one right at the peak of the run out of Port Moller, and it severely hindered our ability to forecast total run. We all knew it was north, a bunch of us knew it was north of 60, but it was somewhere between 55 and 75 because we didn't know what was going on in those 3 or 4 days. We didn't know it was a big lull or if it was an even bigger peak. So it was a rough year, and some of that's the nature of the boats we had deployed, but it was a rough season for weather. To kind of take a lesson from it, one of the big things is this transect is so far from the North Peninsula. When boats run to the peninsula or run up north into cover, they're a long way from the transect. And so we need boats hefty enough that can sit on transect while the weather's blowing 40 and then start fishing as soon as the weather and the seas lay down. And if a boat is 6 or 8 hours away and there's another storm coming in 12 or 14 hours, they can't even get out to the station before. So our experience has been bigger boats can sit there as soon as it lays down for 6 hours. And had we even had 3 or 4 sets in that big gap, we would have been a lot more confident forecasting the total run. The genetics lab came together quite quickly. We did a feasibility study last winter. So is it possible? Technically, it's possible. So we scrambled to round up funding from the RSDA processors and the Institute. We put up $110,000 for the equipment. The RSDA put up $30,000. The processors put up $30,000. And we made all these decisions in April and thought, well, maybe we could get this done in time for the fishing season. So we really scrambled. And there's the timeline on the slide. The upshot of the tests were we did 2 forms of tests. We had a set of 5 samples from the previous year that we knew the genotypes on, and then we ran 5 sets of samples from 2021. And en route to Port Moller, we ran some of the samples in hand to figure out how to do this. It went extremely well. And funny thing is that you never can anticipate the problem. We thought it would be the genetics equipment that would have, the very expensive equipment would have the most difficulty, and it worked without any problems whatsoever. Most of the challenges were associated with trying to handle and extract DNA and handle samples in sometimes zero gravity conditions in the boat. So we're going to make some changes for that coming up here to handle. We're going to have some equipment that hopefully will handle the seas better than a human will. And then in terms of the results, did it work as well as the lab? It worked absolutely as well, and on a few occasions it worked better. And that's measured by how many of the fish you can get the full genotype off of. And the reason it worked better is because more of it's done by human hands instead of robots.
There's time delay by spending another 4 or 5 days getting into a lab. Does that help give you a more accurate sample?
No, not so much. It's really around, as far as I can tell, and we haven't digested all. And it's a small improvement, but occasionally the robot, because it's just doing stuff mechanically, if you end up with some contamination like that tip, it will transfer it and so on and so forth. The human can do a little bit better job, but it takes them longer. In the lab, they have to use robots because they do 400,000 fish a year. You can't have that people.
Yes, Michael, so the improvement for onboard genetics isn't so much about the technical data as it is about the timeline for reporting it back with it.
That's a good question. But far and away, by tenfold. The benefit of doing it on the boat is we don't waste or spend half of one vessel's time taking samples to shore. So he's 50 miles from shore in 9 knots. He spends a lot of time, gets into port, spends time at port. If the tide's not right, he's got to wait 6 or 8 hours. So we lose a vessel every time we run samples to shore. We lose a huge amount of production. He's way off the transect. The weather blows, we can't get back up, so on and so forth. So the big savings of doing this by far is not wasting half of a vessel's time, and therefore be able to fish a lot more of the stations more frequently. And I think I touch on that somewhere here. Here's the 2 vessels, the Pandalis on the left and the Ocean Cat on the right. The Pandalis is a little bit too small for this project. We've known that for years and years. The state has provided it at a heavily subsidized rate. And in a good weather year, it does just fine. But as we moved offshore and didn't need to come into shore, we're looking for a boat that can live out there offshore. Yes.
People on the internet can't hear you. So
Okay. Oh, it's where's the mic for the internet? Oh, I'll stand in front of here then. Sorry, I thought it was being picked up.
This is the mic for the
Okay,
online.
sorry, folks on the internet. So the Pandalis was served us well for 10 years, but we need a little bit bigger boat and one that can just stay out on transect. So that's our goal. We're in an active search. Find a new boat for that in the sort of 80 to 100, 110 foot range. This thing is 68, but it's a small, narrow boat, and it's a challenge platform. So this is the Gene Lab that we built in the Ocean Cat. Heather Hoyt's in the front. She's the ADF&G Gene Lab manager, and Jody Estrada is the woman from Fish and Game who figured all this out at sea. And this is in Seward when we built it. This is the Ocean Cat sitting on blocks, and I've written in a red text there. The lab was built just below decks in a little room there. And this is Jody and Jeff at work. Jeff is our fish technician and former Fish and Game director of Commercial Fish Division, who works on the Port Moller boat. Thanks, Jeff. And Jody. So it's not a very big lab, and those are all the pieces of equipment. So for 2022, the Ocean Cat's going to come back for sure. Skipper over 3 seasons has come a long way. It's all human driven. The quality of this program is, I mean, the vessels are important, but it's the attitude and the expertise of the skippers to fish a gillnet in the middle of the Bering Sea. We're looking hard for a bigger boat. Same old, July 10th to July 5th, June 10th to July 15th is the plan. And we will try to keep the boats out there. Last year was an experiment or a feasibility study with the Genix, so all our samples still came to shore, came to the Anchorage lab for the data that you guys saw. This year, we are planning and hoping, if we can raise the funding and get it done, to run all the genetics at sea. So they will become available sooner in the process, but only by a day or two. You know, the boats have to connect, transfer samples, and then the crew can run them. Well, the time from that to when they're in the labs is roughly 2 days. So at best, we'll save a couple days, but that's still quite a bit when you're only getting a 7-day lead time. In terms of quantity, stock composition estimates are set up historically to run up to 11 sets. We take a couple hundred fish from 2 days of fishing, weight it by the index, and generate these stock composition estimates, which have become incredibly accurate since we've gone to fishing 2 boats out there, catching the 60% of the fish that we used to miss. And here's where it was in my presentation. The most important thing is that we can have a lot more vessel time to fill in those missing stations and not always be spending our time steaming back and forth to the peninsula. That's it for Port Moller last year. What's in order for this year, and the RSDA has been a big part of all these improvements that we've done to the Port Moller test fishery. Without a doubt, we wouldn't have anywhere near the test boat program that we've got now without the RSDA. And it's not an overstatement, the second line there, that we really wouldn't have a Port Moller boat at this point if it was performing as it did 5 and 10 years ago. So Anyway, that's it. Questions? Yes.
When you did your indexing, historically, people always thought station 2 to 4 was maybe Ugashik. Hardly any index numbers. They had a massive season. But you guys are doing genetics at sea. Will you be able to do a better job of genetics coming through different stations and probably getting a better idea of our fish are running through different stations, where they might actually be going?
Yeah, we already have an idea. But you can imagine if all you do is 190 fish over 2 days of fishing, we can't get the spatial resolution super tight, but over the season, you can lump stations 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 and look at the composition. And it is, as everybody suspected, these side stocks dominate especially Ugashik, those inner stations. And the west side dominates the outer stations, and then the upper east side, more the middle. But it's not what everybody asks us all season, which fish are at station 6. It's all fish. 2 years ago, Igigik, the majority of the Igigik index came from offshore of station 12. So it isn't consistent. Every year it varies, and fish are found in all places. So this past year, we ran a full stock comp estimate off of 2 different big sets we got. And all stocks were present. So one was at station 18, one was at station 8 or 10, 8, I think. They were big sets. We were able to generate an estimate just from that set, and we found all the fish there. But if you want a really rough rule of thumb, when the Gene Lab looked at this years ago, and I might misquote it, so I'll give it a bit of a range. Nishigak fish are 3 to 4 times more likely to be in those outer stations than they are the inner stations. And these side stocks are 3 to 4 times more likely to be in the inner station. But you'll find Kwijak, Naknek fish all out of station 20, but their mode is kind of more the center of the distribution. We would love to increase the sample size through time so that we could look at that question in a given season a little more closely. And we will. We've got the Gene Lab. We'll figure this out.
So if you have a Fidelis and it's basically free to operate, what's the chance of getting a third boat, keep the Fidelis inshore, maybe just run it stations 2 to 6?
Yeah.
And put a third boat out in the middle.
Okay. Why weren't you at the RSTA meeting yesterday? Pushing the budget committee now. No, it's tough. The boats are a couple $100,000 a piece. And so it would be nice to have 3 boats, I think that we'll keep chipping away at this through time. If we don't have to go to shore and we have a hefty boat on the the hefty boat might go offshore, the ocean cat can come do the inner stations. We may find out we can get tons of good fishing. We may fish odd numbered stations more, which will give us a little better handle when we see what we saw last year, which is some really patchy distribution. One station has a massive index and the next one's 0. And we're left wondering, is the band half a mile wide or is it 10 miles wide? So if through not going ashore, if we have 50% of a vessel's time, we may do a lot of good spatial resolution fishing. We'd like to run a little more genetics in space and time too, so that we can get a good model for future seasons. This is how variable Ugashik's distribution is, for example. It helps you in the short run because you can see a big spike and that's probably Ugashik. But the genetics tell us that too. In this past year, they told us there were a lot of Ugashik fish coming fairly early, and because Moller has been so untrustworthy, we all just said there must be wrong. It was 10 million fish, right? So one of the foreground harvest optimization yield thing is, how do you make Moller more actionable and trustworthy for managers and for industry? And it's a tipping point kind of thing that if nobody believes, it doesn't matter what it's telling you because nobody will act on it. Processors won't send tenders. Managers might just hesitate another day or two and so on and so forth. So to make it actionable, you got to fish it all. You can't just drop the outer stations and go, wow, it's only 30% of the run, because for several years it was 60% of the run out there. And you don't know that unless you go out there and look. And the point is to go out and look and see what's there. And if we draw zeros, people say, well, that was a waste of money putting the second boat out there. It's like, well, if all the fish were there, it wouldn't have been. So you can't judge it on that outcome. You judge it on making Port Moller trustworthy enough to act on it. Right. To those online, I'm really sorry I stepped away from the podium to get a little closer to the crowd. Let's see. Did I forget anything? No. That's it. Thank you.
Let's hear it.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Sands. I'm the area management biologist for the west side of Bristol Bay. I'm going to give a talk about 2021 season and the outlook for 2022. Hopefully I can do this without knocking everything over. Before I get started, I'm supposed to say that the department will be conducting a preseason processor capacity survey this spring. I also want to acknowledge Jordan Head, Travis Ellison, and Aaron Tiernan for helping me put this presentation together, and Jordan Head, Stacy Vega, and Greg Buck for putting together the forecast. Also, the RSDA has supported the department through Bristol Bay Funding Collaborative. You just heard all about Port Moller. You guys have been supporting us for years, and we appreciate it. Thank you. So I'm just going to go over 2021 quickly, talk about the forecast a little more in depth, just touch on management strategies for 2022, and then a reminder about the Board of Fish meeting in next year in 2022. Here's our obligatory map slide, just in case anybody forgot where they're at. Okay, so for the 2021 season, it was a record. Total run, total inshore run was it was 67.7 million, harvest of almost 42 million, and good escapement. Now these numbers I have here are a little bit different than what we put out in the season summary, because we finished processing all the fish tickets, we've done our run reconstruction, so these are the final numbers for the 2021 season, and it was a really strong year. Escapement wise, we have the escapements all listed here, 5 river system, we have the goals, every goal is a range, except for a lagnac, and then what the actual escapement was, and whether we met or exceeded the goal. 6 of the systems exceeded their goals, 3 of the systems met their goals, but none of the goals were not met. So we were at least in the range or above the range and not below the range, which is a good thing. Okay. Allocation. We have allocation plans for 4 of the 5 districts in Bristol Bay. And here's shows what the target allocation is, what the actual harvest percentages were. And then for Nac-Nac Queejack, it's broken out by set net, the Nac-Nac and the Queejack section. And for Nushagak, the Nushagak section and the Gushik section for set. Because Nushagak set drift net was ahead on allocation, the Wood River Special Harvest Area was opened only for set net, and that is rolled into the set net harvest up here in the Nushagak site. And I know there was a question earlier about allocation and how we manage for it. The priority is trying to control escapement, but we do take steps, differential fishing time to try and manage for allocation as well. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, we're trying to control the escapement. That doesn't necessarily mean we go to continuous fishing with the Nushagak on June 30th. Okay, so for the Nushagak district, it was the 2nd largest harvest and the 2nd largest run ever. There was a lot of fish in the Nushagak, and a lot of them came in all at once. There was a lot of weather, and we were trying to protect Nushagak kings. So we ended up with going over our escapement goals on all the rivers. Here's the numbers. But to me, the most important thing was the 55,000 kings we got up to Nushagak, because that's a really big deal. The lower end of the escapement goal range starts at 55,000. We haven't made that in the last couple of years, and to get there this year was really important, I think. We don't talk about chums here. We haven't made the escapement goal for chums for the last 2 years. Chums have been down statewide, or at least in Western Alaska, they've been down for the last couple of years. We don't do much research on chums. They've never been the big species to pay attention to. Doesn't mean we don't care about them. We just don't have money to put towards that kind of research at this point. But when we're trying to help kings, we're also helping chums. And it's where we're at right now. If it continues to be a problem, they'll get a lot more attention. But hopefully the chum run will bounce back here. So Naknek Quinnipiac District, above average run, 20 million, was the third largest Alagnak run. As far as the escapement goes, tough weather, fish size, entry patterns, they were all potential factors in that. The escapement from Naknek River was 2.8 million, but they did harvest 9.3 million. Big 8 District, they had the 15th highest run since 1952. Sorry. Good escapement within the escapement goal range, harvest of 8.5 million. The big things to take away from Igigik in 2021 were the 1-1s, the largest return ever, and the second largest return ever of 2-1s. And I'm going to talk about that more when I talk about the forecast. And then relative to the last 3 years, there was a resurgence of 2-2s. In Ugashik, largest run since 83 and second largest harvest since 83, or second largest total run since 83. And the whole run in Ugashik was really driven by 1-2s.
I have a question about Dash, if I may. Is it 8.1 in-season catch and escape, or is that the reconstructed run after the post-season analysis? It was closer to 10.
That's a question for Aaron, the Ugashik manager. They're online listing, and I think we'll be able to try and get answers for that at the end. Okay. So yeah, Aaron, the question is this the total run from reconstruction, or is it the total run from the preseason stuff? I'm guessing reconstruction. Okay. So,
reconstruction, Tim. I think.
Okay, thanks, Greg. All right. Overall, age fish weights in 2021 were about a pound below the long-term average for different age classes. This is what this graph is talking about. A decreasing size of age trend has been occurring over the last decade. I can't really read all the notes here. This slide was added since I got to look at the presentation last time. Anyway, you can see that the graphs are showing the fish are getting smaller. People have probably noticed that they're coming back at an earlier age in some cases as well. I think, we said this was the biggest run ever in 2021. It was not the biggest harvest ever, but it was close. But it turns out it was around the 8th largest harvest by weight, when it would have been the 3rd or so largest harvest by number of fish. Because Fish and Game cares about the number of fish, and everybody else cares about the pounds. So, okay, we're going to talk about the forecast. And I've been talking about 1-2s and 2-1s and all that jazz. So when we talk about those, that's the age class of the fish. The first number is the number of years they spent in freshwater. The second year is the number of years they spent in the ocean. The total age is one more than the combined numbers. So a 1-2 is 4 years old. And for 2022, the 1-2s that will come back will have been spawned in 2018. That's the brood year. So I'm going to be doing lots of 1-2s and number of years and all that. So bear with me. If you have questions, come see me at the booth later. Okay. So the ADF&G preseason forecast is split up into 36 individual predictions. These predictions are split up by the 4 major age classes of returning sockeye salmon, 1-2, 2-2, 1-3, and 2-3, that are returning to the 9 major river systems in Bristol Bay. We can sum these individual predictions. As you go down the page, we have the number of each age class and total at the bottom. And then as you go across the page, we add up the river system and produce a total river estimate. And then for the Nushagak and Naknek-Weejack, we can add up the rivers for the district total. When you add up all 36 individual predictions, you come up with a preseason forecast of just over 75 million sockeye salmon. 49.2% of these, going down the page, are 2 ocean fish, and 51% are 3 ocean fish. Right there. Okay. Now to get to the harvest, we have to take out the escapement, and there is some harvest outside of Bristol Bay that happens. So we have the surplus or the escapement here, and then the South Peninsula listed there as well. And then the grand total is potential harvest of 60 million sockeye salmon. So that's a big number. All right. Now I want to give this forecast a little bit of context. So this graph shows the bars in red, which are the forecasts, and the bars in blue, which are the actual runs, the observed runs. So you can see this forecast for 2022 is the biggest red bar out there. It's the biggest run forecast we've ever made, but it's only a little bit bigger than what actually happened in 2021. So it's really not that fantastic to look at. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the blue bars are, you can see the last 5 or 6 years, the blue bars are much higher than the red bars. That means we've been under forecasting the run, and hopefully this year the forecast is closer to what we expect, and we'll come in right around 75 million. When we built this forecast, though, there's several different stocks that have potentially lots of variability. And I want to delve into some specifics on 3 of them, just to explain where the numbers come from and how they could be different. So if you look at this, we have all these different models for Wood River 1-2s. And we see the stars by them. There's one by 10.9 million, the 5-year average, and the one by the 2.6 million is for the sibling model. So the siblings are the brothers and sisters that came back as 1-1s in 2021. Their brothers and sisters come back as 1-2s in 2022. And traditionally, the Wood River 1-1 projection is a good model for the next year's 1-2s. We're at 7 million, kind of between the 10.9 and the 2.6. But this is coming off 2018 brood year. In 2018, we had 20 million 1-2s come back to the Wood River. And we had 7.5 million escape. If we had 1 fish come back from 2018 for every 1 that spawned, we'd be at 7.5 million. And we generally have 2.5 or more come back. So there is a lot of potential for that number to be a lot bigger. On the other hand, when we look at the sibling model, we would expect to see 80,000 or 120,000 1-1s, and we would expect to see that this year. And we didn't. We only saw 8,000. Now, is that because out of 27 million fish that came back, it was hard to find 80,000 1-1s? Or is it because when we put 7.5 million fish up there in 2018, we tipped over the top of the productivity curve and we're going to get less return per spawner than we usually get? That's the question. And that's where the possible uncertainty is. That makes sense. Okay. Nushagak 1-3s. 15.3 million 1-3s to the Nushagak River. That's just an amazing number. You can look at our models. We have one model saying 10.9. And so the models, we do these models, and then we grade them with some statistics on how they perform, and we choose the best performing models. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's more than 1. If it's more than 1, we average them together. That's what we've done here, 20.9 million and 10.9 million. Traditionally, our best predictor for 1-3s in the Nushagak, which is a 1-3 system, our best predictor is the sibling model, the 1-2s from the previous year. we had over 8 million 1-2s come back to the Nushagak River in 2021, which would be, if we get our average 2.6 1-3s to come back, would be 16, 17 million. That's the lowest we've ever seen for the number of 1-3s coming back is 2.6. We're projecting 15 million. Is it possible that the Nushagak is switching from a 1-3 system to a 1-2 system, and we'll have a smaller number of 1-3s coming back this year? Or if the sibling model really works, and we see 3 or 4 fish coming back for every 1-2 that we saw in 2021, it could be over 30 million. So that's where the uncertainty and variability comes from. Okay, big, we're at 8 million forecast there. You see there's 4 different models going from 2 million to 20 million. When I talked about this year in Big, the big thing was the largest number of 1-1s and the second largest number of 2-1s ever came back. Well, their siblings would be coming back this year, or coming back in 2022. And in 2015, the brood year 2015, we had 295,000 1-1s, and they had 11 million 1-2s next year. So we're at 8 million, and there's a lot of leeway there for that number to go either way. And you see the models 2 million to 20 million. So that's where all the variability comes from. That's why the forecast is so big. We have all these really big sibling numbers, escapement numbers, and we just don't know exactly where it's going to end up. Here's the overall summary. 75.3 million fish, the range is 61 to 89. Potential harvestable surplus, 60 million, although I say right now we're going to be protecting Nushagak kings. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to take all 60 million. I can pretty much guarantee you that we're going to go over the escapement goals again in the Nushagak district. Not because we're trying to, but just because that many fish, it's going to be hard to catch them all. Really the stocks to watch: Wood River 1-2s, Nushagak 1-3s, Igigik 1-2s, and 2-2s. And again, the variability in the forecasting. Record escapements: Wood River in 2018, 7.5 million, and the sibling returns: small in Wood, big in Igigik. As far as management strategies, we're going to do our outlook in the spring like we always do. We're going to be thinking about how we're going to manage our districts between now and then. So we don't have a lot on management strategies right now. But I will say Nushagak kings are going to get priority. It's the biggest forecast ever in the Nushagak. The biggest run ever was 2018, 33 million. This is 30 million, and we could beat that 33 million total run. So what's that going to do to the fleet size in Nushagak? And if the fleet's in Nushagak, what's it going to do to the fleet size in the other districts, which also have large forecasts? So that's what we're going to be thinking about as managers for the next few months when we come up with our outlook. Where fish meeting was delayed by a year because of COVID. It's going to be end of November. I don't think they've set the schedule exactly yet, but typically it'll be end of November 2022. Proposal deadline is April 11. Regular review of management plans. Somebody was talking about allocation earlier. Most of that, there's a dozen plus management plans across Bristol Bay. Most of them were written in the 90s, and they've never been reviewed comprehensively. It's the Board of Fish process is great, but it's a bit here and a piece there kind of process. I think it'd be great if some entities got together and started going through line by line on management plans to see if they're still doing what they were intended to do in the beginning. And a prime example is the Nushagak King Plan, which when it was written, based triggers on Wood River Sockeye escapement and had no triggers based on Nushagak River Sockeye escapement because the Nushagak River was a weak stock. And that's not the situation now. And other things have changed around the bay. So I think it'd be good to try and review those management plans. That's what I got. Any questions? All right.
At some point, your management team, I feel like so many reds go by. Don't they start to put pressure on the same system that the kings are? So trying to get kings up, there was more reds up, and they start taking away reporting from the kings.
No, I think they spawn in different areas. They rear differently. So I don't think there's pressure like that, but it's independent kind of pressure really. But we do let sockeye up. You know, I figure we had 1.5 million sockeye go by up the Nushagak before we fished just to protect the kings. And that's not so much out of 27 million, but in a normal year, that would be a lot. There's one over there.
So I got a question for somebody, the question about like, last year. We don't always have a rear view mirror, but I'm wondering if there anything, knowing what you do now, that you might think about doing differently. This last year.
Of course, there's always things to do differently. I've been thinking about this a lot. I actually wrote something up here for my own, getting it straight in my head. A big chunk of that was protecting kings, and no, I wouldn't change that. We need to get those kings safe. All you have to do is look at Cook Inlet and see what happens to commercial fisheries when the kings get left behind. And I don't think any of us want to be there. And plus, besides all that, we care about kings and chums. Who fished in Michigan? Was weather a problem? No? Mesh size. Did anybody see fish going through the nets? There's lots of things we could all do differently. You know, I try and extend fishing when the weather's going to be bad. So you'll see that. I'll try and do more of that. If we see that we're going to catch, turns out 2.5 million sockeye on June 30th. In season, the daily reports said 1.8 one day and 1.7 June 1.7 something on June 30th and 1.8 on July 1. But the fish tickets say it was really 2.5 million fish in one district on one day. That's like the whole capacity of the bay. So maybe if we see a big wall of fish coming like that, we'll extend it longer. We'll try and provide more fishing time, but we still have to worry about allocation. You know, I guess my approach has always been we catch more fish if we take breaks. We take some flood tide off every tide, so that the fish come in and spread out, and it's not a line fishery. Now, if processes are on limits or if the weather's bad, the line fishery doesn't really develop. But if it's flat calm and there's no other limitations, if we just fish 24/7, we'll have a line fishery, and people will quit because they can't compete at the line. They don't want to compete at the line, whatever. So we're better off taking some time off. That's been my approach since that first record run in 2006, when we started fishing 24/7, and we got a bunch of feedback saying don't do that. But I'm always willing to listen to other people's thoughts on this, and I really haven't gotten that much. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of it over escapement in the Nushagak, but nobody called to complain. I mean, that doesn't mean they're not happy about it or unhappy about it, but they didn't tell me, so I don't know.
Since Eric's on the line, could you ask me if you can approach the gassing district any different next year?
Aaron, the question is, are you going to approach New Gashic District any different in 2022?
I didn't think we could, but.
All right, well, we heard Greg, Aaron, I don't know if you're in there listening or not, I can't tell, but again, you know, we're always available. I'm always happy to take phone calls, and I know Aaron and Travis are too. Emails, reach out to us and talk to us directly. We're always happy to talk. I'll be over at the booth as soon as I'm done here. I'm going over. I'll be over there next couple days. and really love to chat with the folks and get their feedback and perspective.
Hey, Tim, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my speaker was all wonky there, but apologies. As far as next year for you guys, yeah, I'd definitely like to be a little bit more aggressive on the front end if things are looking like they did this year. You know, obviously, in hindsight, it's going to be 2020, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, looking back, there's definitely some moves I could have done differently. So hopefully, if things are transpiring as they did this year, we'll be looking to be a little bit more aggressive.
All right, thanks.
Tim, thanks for explaining the terminology around the 1, 2, and 2. I always thought I understood that, but I didn't realize that their total age was actually 1 year beyond that. And then I'm interested in the 1 check, 2 check. I know that probably indicates the years in freshwater. I don't understand what the meaning behind that use of that word.
So when we age fish, say fish spawns in 2018, it goes in the gravel in August. January 1st, it turns 1 year old. It's still an egg. And then the next year, January 1st, it'll come out of the gravel in February, March, swim around the lake, rearing for that summer, stay through the winter. January 1st, it turns 2 years old, and it has 1 freshwater check. Then it might go out to the ocean in the spring, and then it'll start getting the ocean growth. January 1st, it'll be 3 years old, have 1 freshwater check and 1 saltwater check. And it could come back as a 1, or it could stay out for another year, be a 1, 2, January 1st, 4 years old, 1 freshwater, 2 saltwater, and so on. And then if it stays 2 years in freshwater, then it's a 2 in the front, and then however many years it's.
So the check refers to the amount of time in the freshwater.
Explain what the annualized.
Right, it's a treatment growth, right? You can look at the scale or the otolith and see when the winter growth is narrow and the summer growth is wide, and so you count those narrow winter bands on the scale. And yeah, the check, a 2 check, but we use it both ways, a 2 check freshwater or 2 check ocean. So it is confusing in that regard.
The check is the number of winters, so the numbers are referring to how many winters it's spent in the 2 environments. And its first winter, it's not a fish yet, it's an egg, and so it has not here for that on its scale. So the rest of the winters, 1 winter in fresh water is really on its scale. It's 2 that spent its first year as an egg or close to it. So just the check is referring to tight winter growth on a scale, and it doesn't have a scale. It's almost 1 year old. There's no structure for that. Expressed.
Are you confused now?
I think I get it. I was just checking on it.
MJ?
Question regarding jacks and their return, and if there's a high positive correlation for year classes, if you can explain that.
Right, so that's the sibling relationship. So 1-1s in the Wood River are jacks, and that's what we use to predict the 1-2 run in the Wood River. We can have as 1-1s and 2-1s, and they're both considered jacks because it's 1 year in the ocean. The kind of it's a jack because they're like 90-something% male. They're precocious fish. Anyway, they don't bring eggs back to spawn, so they're mostly male. That's why they're called jacks. And they're a good predictor in some systems. They're a good predictor for the other age class. These are good questions, but some of them might be better addressed by the research staff too. So reach out to them as well.
You're doing fine.
Question over there?
Another question, Board of Fish meeting is next year, a year from
2022.
So going into 2022 season, regulatory wise, someone in theory could put in an emergency request or consider some regulatory change in light of the forecast. Have you guys considered doing that?
We've got wind of anyone else thinking of doing that, and any kind of regulation that might affect your ability to harvest.
I've not been privy to any discussions on that. That might be a forest question. But at this point, I think the forecast just came out last week. We haven't talked about it at this juncture. Anybody else?
I have a question. Is there any average weight to the base class, like say a 1.3 or 1.1?
Yes, there is wage weight information. So the top lines are one threes and 2 threes. And I don't, you can see, I can't read on this computer. Hopefully it's bigger on the screen, what the lines are. And then, so, you know, you can see the 1.2s and 2.2s are down in the last couple of years, down in the 4 pound range. Whereas the 1.3s and 2.3s are 5 plus. Yeah.
2 questions. One's for Aaron. Are they considering at all about putting the counting towers up earlier in Ugashik? We talked, Michael, and talked about the run seem to be showing up earlier. Second question is on the forecast being it's a surplus. Just to say harvest surplus. Just curious if enforcement.
I don't know why we changed from harvest to surplus. It's because it's not guaranteed to be harvest, right? It's potential harvest, but reality is it's going to be tough to harvest 50+ million sockeye Bristol Bay. Aaron, did you hear the one question about starting the counting towers earlier in Ugashik?
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to add much. You know, generally when that tower does go in, they've got about 5 days, 10 days of pretty low counts. So they really do get in to catch that front part of the run. Last year those fish held off and we had low counts for a long period of time until they all kind of rushed in. So I don't know if getting it in earlier would be beneficial, but it's definitely something we can look at.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
This question is for Aaron, and it's, have you considered in-district test fishing for Ugashik?
Aaron, the question is, have you considered in-district test fishing in Ugashik?
Yeah, it's something that's been brought up. I'm going to look some deeper into it, but yeah, there could be some holdups within that with just the whole process of getting a test fish boat, but it's definitely something to look at.
Thank you. I don't see any hands up.
Hey, Tim.
Oh, Brad?
Yeah. Quickly, if you begin to fall short of your 55,000 threshold on Kings, Michigan, what's the strategy? I mean, you had 10 million fish over escaping last. You're going to continue to allow that to happen?
So this year, the way we did it, the way the management plan is written is kind of open to interpretation. It says we have to project 100,000 sockeye up the Wood River if we're projecting below the lower end of the king salmon escapement goal. What does that mean, projecting 100,000 sockeye up the Wood River? Are they in the river? Or are they? I mean, right now I can project that we're going to have 100,000 sockeye up the Wood River, right? So the way we did it was we wanted to get an actual 100,000 sockeye up the Wood River. And the problem with that is there's still 24 hours of fish between the district and the tower when we start fishing. And if we make the announcement at 9 in the morning and we start fishing at 2 in the afternoon, there's another several hours of fish that get to go by. So, like I said, I figured 1.5 million, somebody's got not written online there.
That's why they paid 6
Speak a little louder. So yes, we're gonna still try and be cautious. We're gonna stick to the same way we did this year and try and hit that spot where there's not too many fish going up the river before we start fishing. But the fish can move in big numbers really quickly, so it's hard. We really want to show that we're making the effort to protect kings. And then after that, we tried to keep fishing to less than 12 hours with the drift fleet each day until we thought we were going to get a big hit on the 30th, and then we kind of just went wide open.
Do you ever use the test vessel for king management to see maybe determine if the king's in the district or not? Or I think not that's a good idea, but would you be able to do that?
We did do that in the early 2000s. We had some test boats go out for kings. It's one of the, we don't want to fish on something we're trying to protect, right? So I look at the subsistence harvest and see what's going on there. And then the sonar starts counting on June 6th. So we're getting the information kind of really early on. It would make more sense to go out with the Sockeye gear and see what the Sockeye are doing. And then, if you're catching a lot of kings incidentally there, that would give you some information. If you're not, that also gives you information. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So you could do it. Nothing needs to change.
No, nothing needs to change.
I mean, I guess it's
Yeah.
able to see, 'cause if things are coming in closest to maybe be able to see if there's a bunch of reds out there and there aren't any, so they're.
Right. Politically, though, it would make people crazy if we said we were doing a king salmon test fishery.
Yeah, one more just time for one more question. Mine. The question is sonar. Are we comfortable with where the location of the sonars are? Are we comfortable with the updated version of software for sonars? Are we comfortable with the mechanics of that sonar operation?
So the sonar operation is designed to count sockeye. We've been counting kings incidentally. We have right now an ongoing project where we're trying to evaluate how we could change our counting and everything to better count kings. We've looked at putting the sonar in different places, adding additional sonar, maybe mid-river, because right now we're counting the sides of the river, not the middle, and a lot of kings go up the middle. And that 55,000, that's the sonar count, that's not the total escapement, because we're not counting the whole river, and we know that, first of all, a lot of kings go up the middle, and then when you have 4-something million sockeye salmon going up the Michigan River, it's kind of hard to weed out 55,000 kings. The way the sonar works is the sonar counts fish, and then we apportion those fish to species by using drift nets, and we have inshore and offshore zones on each side of the river. We have the counts in those zones and then the catches in those zones that we run through our spreadsheets, and it tells us that we caught the counts proportion to this many chum, this many sockeye, and this many kings. And so there could be masking, or the kings are forced further offshore because they don't want to swim in with the sockeye. So there's a lot of things that could potentially be going on. But there's definitely room for improvement. And we're working on coming up with how we can make it better, but it's not something we can just throw something new in the water and have it done this year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming. That includes the guests, all of you, the members, the staff, and the board for participating. It's been an amazing opportunity to get out in front of the fleet again in person instead of in a little screen. So thank you for coming. We'll see you in the back.